Yo, what's up guys? Bill here, Classic Rock and Metal Review, here to talk about, review, pretty new CD for me anyway. I just got this maybe a month or two ago, but just got really into checking it out in depth the last couple of weeks. This is Led Zeppelin live in Seattle, triple CD. It's the entire concert. And I just realized right before hitting record on this sucker that today is actually July 17th of 2022. This concert is from July 17th of 77. So we have a 45th anniversary for this show today. That's really crazy. Anyway, like I said, 3 CDs. I also happen to have, and I bought this thing about 12, 14 years ago, same exact concert, DVD of the entire show called Final Kingdome. This is, again, like I said, the entire show. So we'll get into that a little bit in the end. I hope you guys are having a good summer, by the way. It's going great, man. Love it. It's why I'm a little scattered with the videos right now. Just kind of enjoying things and still working and all that stuff. So anyway, hope you guys are doing good. If you guys can like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, that'd be great. All right. All right, let's just get into the Zeppelin Seattle show. I'll give you a little bit of the build up as far as them touring, and this was their first tour in 2 years. So the end of the 75 Physical Graffiti tour happened suddenly when Robert Plant gets into a car accident in Greece. And basically he's convalescing a couple different places, but ends up in California for like tax reasons. Page joins him there. This is like fall, September-ish, 75. They decide the next thing to do is to record another album. So they get to writing and rehearsing. And by the end of the year, they're finished with Presence. It's kind of the first album in a while at least, or maybe ever, with no keyboards. It's more just straight to the point rock and roll. Album ends up coming out the end of March 76. Sells the least of their albums, but of course it sells great anyway. So the next thing on the agenda, of course, is to tour, but Plant's just not really into the idea. Kind of wants to just lay back and, sort of chill out and continue to recover. The recording of Presence was a little bit of a struggle for him because of his injuries from that accident. So the plans are then cooking for a huge tour the following year to start early in 77. So basically behind Presence, but the album's coming up on a year old by the time they get to the 77 tour. He spent 2 months rehearsing in the beginning of the year, coming up with a new set list. And we'll get into that when we go over the set list with Seattle. They plan a 51 city tour. End up starting until April 1st. I think it was supposed to start towards the end of February. Plant comes down with laryngitis. So the tour is kind of under a little bit of a black cloud right from Jump Street. The band's equipment had already been shipped over to the US ahead of them when they realized Plant was sick. So the band couldn't even rehearse. The other 3 guys couldn't even rehearse. So they hadn't played together for coming up on 6 weeks when they had their first rehearsals right before the first US show. So at this point, it's something to just note. I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, but by the mid-70s or 77, basically the race was on who could be the biggest band and sell the most tickets at the most venues. Rock had become big business. Stadium tours started in droves in sort of like the 75, 76 era. So 77, you're Led Zeppelin, you want to outdo everyone else, and that was sort of the name of the game. Set some records along the way, and really by playing by playing stadiums in certain cities and multiple nights at big arenas and others, it really did sort of set the benchmark for what a lot of other bands would try to follow later if they were big enough to do it anyway. So nonetheless, like for instance, they did 6 shows at Madison Square Garden and then 6 at the LA Forum later on, or LA first actually, Madison Square Garden later. Stadiums in cities, where maybe the arenas were too small to do that in for them. So anyway, basically rock had become a big business. The crowds could be a little out of control in some of the places. There were a lot of arrests in a couple of cities. They had to use tear gas, I think, in Tampa. That show, I think, was, postponed because of a bad thunderstorm, lightning storm. But nonetheless, there were just some issues. Page's heroin addiction was sort of, you know, ongoing, kind of affecting his performance somewhat. And the other thing too was the band sort of made a, you know, you'd think from Altamont there would have been some lessons learned, but they hired a gangster basically be in charge of security for them, a guy named John Bindon. Bindon, manager Peter Grant, and Bonzo would all face charges for assaulting a promoter, Bill Graham, employee about a week later. So the tour was definitely not without its issues. The absolute worst being when one day after the assault, 1 week after Seattle, Robert Plant finds out his 5-year-old son Carrick dies of a stomach virus. I mean, just so sad. So the Seattle show was the first show of the fourth leg of the American tour. They had just had about a month off after playing New York City, Madison Square Garden. I think that was June 7th to the 14th, I want to say. Seattle coming up, you know, about 5 weeks later, like I said. So anyway, let's just get to the show itself. I know that, you know, when I was doing a little research, and, you know, I really didn't expect any sort of drama. All the stuff I just told you, wasn't even aware of most of that stuff. But nonetheless, you know, it seems to be, it always seems to be there. I always love watching rock documentaries. So just gave you the sort of short version of what was going on at the time for Zeppelin there. A little bit of drama, as you can hear. The tour was massive, and that I think was, you know, somewhat a little problematic with playing like stadiums, fireworks going off in the crowd, you know, and bad timing as far as the band reintroducing an acoustic set. However, the Seattle show, Plant even comments that, you know, it's one of the nicest shows of the tour. The crowd seems to be a little more in control. So he comments during the show about that. But anyway, so let's get like talking about the music of it. Just like I said, set list a little different. Drop a couple of the heavy hitters they've been playing for years in Moby Dick and How Many More Times. The show starts out with Song Remains the Same. Great opener. Gotta love it, right? Sounds good. And right into Sick Again. You know, Sick Again is one of those songs where I would think it would be one of the last songs you would pluck off of Fizz, but really it's grown on me over the years. I think it's probably done the same for a lot of people. Sounds really strong. Nobody's Fault But Mine's next. Get something from Presence. That sounds good. Then you get Over the Hills and Far Away. I forget what song had been... this was an addition or sort of a switch up. Earlier in the tour they've been playing something different. I'm sorry, I forget. I should have wrote that down. I forget what it was. Sounds pretty good. Plant sounds good here, if not fantastic. Jimmy sounds okay. I would say his solos are lacking some inspiration. I don't want to say it's, you know, drugs or whatever. I just got to, you know, give my honest opinion. He sounded better in the past. Of course, as usual, John Paul sounds phenomenal, but, you know, Bonham actually makes a few mistakes in here, and, you know, that's really a sign of something, I think, there, more than Page. You know about Page's addiction problem, but Bonham being off time, you just don't, not off time, but he misses cues. You're just not expecting that, you know. They're just so perfect up until here. Basically, it's tough to even compare to yourself when you're Led Zeppelin up until 75. I guess that's the thing here. But still sounds great. I mean, it's still Zeppelin, and they still sound really good. Next up, Since I've Been Loving You, I would have to say this one, up until this far in the show, I thought everything sounded really good. This one's just, it sounds okay, but it really is just lacking something that it's had up until now. And I love that song. It's one of my favorites. No Quarter sounds pretty awesome. This one sounds good. I'm glad they didn't drop this from the set. I think it was on the menu for a possible chop. Notice it stays in the set and it sounds great. Really like it. Just so cool how John Paul just never really does the same piano solo twice. So he continues that here. Then we go on to the disc 2. You get 10 Years Gone, which this is one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. It might be my favorite Zeppelin song. It sounds awesome. John Paul Jones has the triple neck acoustic. Sounds cool, you know. I mean, it's, you know, he's basically trying to do a bass and an acoustic all at once. So it sounds interesting. It sounds different than the record. I like it. Then you get the true acoustic set here. Battle of Evermore, Going to California, Black Country Woman, really love that one. Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, White Summer, into Black Mountainside. It all sounds good. I mean, I love acoustic guitar, you know. I just don't know if I would have rather, I think I would have probably rather had, maybe they just kept it to 2-3 songs and got back to the electric. That's my personal opinion. Because it's a long acoustic set. A couple of fireworks go off during it. Plant makes a comment. And it could have been worse for such a long section. I mean, had this been in, New York City, you probably would have heard 20 fireworks. So just a couple. And when you're watching the DVD, you see like Page look up like he was sure shell-shocked. Just not, what are you going to do? It happened. Kind of a bummer. But anyway, then Black Mountainside right into Kashmir. Now here's where the show, in my opinion, really just picks up and just right into the stratosphere of what you're used to from Zeppelin. Kashmir sounds amazing. I love this version here. The drum solo, Moby Dick's gone. Like I said, how many more times it's gone? But the drum solo they call Over the Top. It's just, I like that Bonham's not tied to the Moby Dick version of the drum solo anymore. He just does what he wants. It's just like watching Bonham play like in his rehearsal space in his house or something. He's just doing what he feels like, and it's pretty cool. A couple of inflections to Moby Dick in there, here and there. But mostly it's a brand new solo, which is, really interesting. Not that he ever did the same thing twice anyway with Moby Dick, but you get my point. It's just a whole different riff. It's cool. Guitar solo's cool. It sounds awesome. It's pretty long too, but yeah, it does a good job on this one. It's cool. I love it. Achilles' Last Stand sounds good. And again, you have, despite the fact that, and oddly enough, you have Page, I think, doing it the right way, and Bonham and John Paul, when they do the descending or the ascending notes, those other two guys just keep playing straight ahead as if it's not about to change. But I think Page gets it right and changes in the right spot, and it not only happens once, it happens twice in the song. Just kind of weird, but it's still a good version despite that. It's just something that takes 5 seconds away from a couple spots of what, a 7 or 8 minute song. Sounds awesome. I like it. Stairway to Heaven sounds phenomenal. Whole Lot of Love and then Rock and Roll. It's written as 2 separate songs on this disc, but it's actually one long song. It's not much a whole lot of love at all. It's basically right into rock and roll. Sort of an intro, minute or two intro into rock and roll. Would have just preferred the whole versions, but that's how they were doing it. So that's what you get. Anyway, man, I think overall I will call it a mandatory boot. I was on the verge of, creating a new segment here just for this disc, because really at first, plus what I was reading also, I think, but then my own first listen, noticing the, being off time here and there, or people missing marks is more like what was happening. Between that and, this long acoustic set, I was ready to say it's not really mandatory, but the more I think about it, so I listened to it once all the way through. And then rather than listen to it twice, and I always listen to everything at least twice before I give a review on it. And that's if I don't know it like the back of my hand, like a lot of things. Instead of listening to the CD twice, which I played it like once and then maybe half of another, went to the DVD and watched the entire DVD as my second listen. So I got to tell you, you really get a different point of view when you're watching a DVD of a concert. You just sort of, I don't know, you get more of a feel for it or what have you. So first listen, I was ready to say, not a mandatory bootleg, but second listen and watching it didn't hurt. I really would have to say, yes, this is a great show. It has its moments where, it's lacking, couple missed marks, like I said, but overall, it's a great little snapshot of the band. And, you got to give them a little slack. They just had been off 5 weeks, maybe a little rust going on. The CD can still be had. I just got this, like I said, a few months ago. It goes for about $40 from Japan. 3 CDs. All 3 CDs look the same, but you do get some nice things behind the disc there. Cool picture. And behind disc, well, it's, I love the fat box thing, man. Just a whole, grew up with them. So anything that goes back to the 70s or the 80s for me is cool. And nice back cover. And there's your CD. The DVD cannot be had anymore. This is a 2007, no label. on here at all, so I can't even give you any information. Final Kingdome, it's called. One single CD, or DVD rather. Pretty cool little, you know, DVD slipcase kind of deal. Good show. The graphics are good, not great. It's sort of like watching a VHS. I mean, at this point, it's 15 years old. But, you know, your source is obviously 77. This was the film that was up on some huge screens. I think on the sides. This was a huge stadium show. You know, I think most towns tried to do this, but, you know, for sure Seattle did. And glad they did. I mean, I caught the whole show. Pretty good camera work. The only problem is there's hardly anything of John Paul Jones. Other than no quarter, they give him a couple of seconds, you know, maybe in 5 or 10 spots. Not a whole lot much more for Bonzo. It's mainly a Plant and Page DVD. Not a lot of wide shots, no crowd shots at all. Obviously, it was going to be on the screen for the crowd to look at. Selling massive stadiums, you want people in the back to be able to see, that kind of deal. But overall, you know, I mean, the sound's pretty good. And I'm actually curious, like, is this where the CD got the sound from? The sound is that good on this DVD. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's pretty solid. Picture can be a little rough here and there, but overall, it's pretty good. I'd give the DVD quality of the picture about a 7.5 or an 8. Not bad for being, you know, it's not even officially produced, and it's, you know, 45-year-old source material. But it sounds really good. I'd give the sound like about an 8, 8.5. So overall, very worthy addition to your collection. I don't think any of this was on the Led Zeppelin official DVD. I think maybe some hidden stuff in there, Easter eggs or whatever the hell they're called. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode, man. Like I said, I hope you're enjoying the summer. Get yourself some Zeppelin, much sort of often maligned tour, but I think they got a good representation. It's the entire show. Love that, right? All right, man. I'll catch you later. If you can like and subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Catch you later, guys.